And now, live from Jerusalem, you're listening to Israel-Inspired Radio. Here are your hosts, Rabbis Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel.
Shalom, everybody, and welcome to Israel Inspired on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. This is Jeremy Gimpel, and I'm here with Rabbi Ari Abramowitz, broadcasting from the beautiful mountains of Judea, the deepest settlement in Judea, at least in this part of Gush Etzion today, overlooking the mountains, the Dead Sea, the mountains of Moab, literally in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it's nice to bring this place and our message to you today. Ari, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. This place is a vortex. It's really a vortex. Like you could be standing. Most of the time I stand and whichever direction I look at, I want to stretch the moment out and I want to take more of it in than my eyes can actually take it. Like, you ever see a view here and you snap a photo and you look at the photo and you just press delete because it just doesn't even get near conveying the power of the place.
I hear what you're saying. I've never done that, but I definitely understand the sentiment.
Yeah, so I want to take more and more and more of it in. It's such a powerful view, but not only the view, the air, the earth, the whole experience, but then a wave can come, a cloud can come over your eyes, and you could be walking through it and not even see the beauty and just be experiencing the fear of whatever it is you're afraid of.
Well, there's a huge task at hand. We have taken upon ourselves a huge mission in building up this community and building up this center, and it's larger than life. It's definitely larger than my life, and there's a lot of fear that's involved in payments that we have to make. And I mean, right now we've just ripped up all of the roads around the property, laying down the infrastructure that will be here for the next 100 years. I mean, the electricity, the watering system, the sewage system. I mean, what we're doing now is so important, and it's just, there's just a lot that you can get lost in.
So many things to get lost in. Fear, I think, is the category. And then we could have a number of different subcategories. But there's also the frustration of the money itself. You know, what we're doing here it's been conveyed to us by others, by political leaders, rabbinical leaders, and also just obvious geopolitical truths, that it is of critical strategic importance, not only for Judea and Samaria, but for Israel, and by extension of that, the entire Jewish people in the whole world. And what we're trying to do is to glorify and magnify Judea, to protect Israel. And then I look at these synagogues in Brooklyn that are $40 million they're raising to build a synagogue in Brooklyn, another synagogue in Brooklyn. Whereas what we're trying to do here is just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that, and so far more consequential and majestic and historic and the destiny of it. And it's just frustrating that we have to struggle so hard to make this work. But then again, we struggle and we struggle and we struggle, and then Hashem sends some sort of angel to us from this direction or that direction that steps up, and it's not really a consequence of our struggling. So then I'm saying maybe the real struggle is to let go of the struggle and to understand it's not in our hands anyways.
Well, I think there's two things that are going on. This place has made a transformation in me, specifically about the struggle, because moving out here has been a real struggle. I mean, it's by far been the hardest thing that I've ever done. It's been the scariest thing that I've ever done. You know, physically, it wasn't pleasant moving out here. I mean, especially in the beginning when we didn't even have a toilet. We had a compost toilet outside with like 6 kids and no air conditioning. And all right, so like I've lived through the military. I mean, I can deal with the physical parts of it. But, you know, just living, you feel very exposed out here. I got little children.
We just, right before the show, we're walking. I wanted to take a walk, clear my head, think about what we were going to say. We walk by your house. Your front door is open. There's like 5 Arabs doing construction work right outside your front door with your kids inside. And it's like, I just feel like on some level, I know this is a terrible, faithless thing to say, but every day is a gamble. and you're like gambling with very high stakes right now.
Yeah, it's a gamble. And then, as I live with that reality, I also, was so close with not only Ari Fold, but much of the Fold family. I mean, I've known them since I was in the 8th grade. And, this, hero of Israel, this humble man, just a wonderful human being, like a real warrior of Israel, just on his way to the supermarket. And then never mind that. Think about the Jews in Pittsburgh. I mean, these were probably the people that thought that they were the safest Jews in the world. In the sleepy town, going to synagogue, attending a circumcision, and then the largest mass shooting of any Jewish community ever in the history of America just shocked everyone. And so I just feel like there's so much that can go wrong in this world, and this world is such a struggle. In fact, the more friends that I have, and the more you sort of like peel off the externalities and you get behind, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. How you doing? And you actually start really having soul talks with people. Everyone is struggling. Everyone.
That's the theme. The theme is the everybody has their fears, everybody has their struggles. What they are changes, and some people can look at other people's and be like, that's what you're afraid of? But if it's a very real thing for that person, then it's just as real as anyone else.
And so I've really been kind of contemplating this whole idea of the struggle. And of course, we're in the Parshas of Jacob, and now we're in Parshas of Joseph, and Yaakov's name is to struggle. And somehow I think that's encoded in the Tanakh. And that's really a message to us that when you think about the heroes of the Bible, all of them lived very hard lives. All of them struggled immensely. I mean, imagine Abraham. The man didn't have any children. Then he finally has a child. He's got to send the child away. Then he has another child. Then he's called to kill that child. I mean, just like, then his wife dies. I mean, it's just like hardships after hardships.
Yeah, and let's look for a second at Jacob. Right, Jacob, he has to run away from his brother who wants to kill him. And he goes and he loses all of his money, all of his physical possessions. He pretty much does slave labor to acquire his wives. He's tricked. His wage is changed 1,000 times. His father-in-law wants to kill him and runs after him. And the minute he runs away from his father-in-law, he runs into his brother that has 400 men that have come to, I mean, it looks like an army approaching. His brother wants to kill him, right? And what does it say? It says, Vayar Yaakov me'od vayitzar lo, right? Yaakov was very afraid, and this distressed him. And so it's interesting. Chazal say, why do our sages say he was afraid? Well, Esau had certain merits, right? The merit of living in the land of Israel was a certain merit that Jacob didn't have these 22 years, or the merit of honoring his mother and father that Jacob didn't have. But, the Dat Zkenim, he said something that really resonated deeply with me, and I think it's going to hit you hard too. He said that the reason Yaakov was distressed was because of the fear itself, right? That's actually what the text says in the simplicity. It says Yaakov was very afraid, and he was and that distressed him,
saddened him. But tsar,
yes, that Hashem made him a promise: I will guard you wherever you go. I will send you out, and I will bring you back to this land. And yet he was still afraid. That he was afraid because of he was distressed because of this fear. That's why he was afraid, because he was afraid because he was afraid.
He was sad because he was afraid.
He was distressed because he was afraid, but he was also afraid because he was afraid. Because the fear itself weakens him. The fear itself weakens the deep, overwhelming emunah and bitachon, the faith and the conviction and the, how do you define bitachon again?
Trust.
The trust, the faith and the trust, which really opens him up for injury, for wound, which we see actually happens.
Yeah, I feel like, it's coming out here, my emotions have been expanded. They've become much more powerful. And the fears and the doubts, have I done the right thing? Is this not the right thing? I mean, there's so much that could go wrong. How do I stay happy? What are the techniques? And I feel like, sometimes my emunah is strong, and I feel like I'm on a mission. I have a calling. I'm fulfilling my mission. I'm fulfilling my destiny. And then sometimes, I feel scared, frustrated, angry, nervous, anxious, whatever the words are, and my emunah is weak. And then every time my emunah is weak, I sort of feel like a little bit like the way you describe Yaakov. Now I'm like, well, I'm just sad that I'm sad. I'm just sad because the fact that I have these nervous feelings already is like, man, don't I just have faith that everything's going to be all right? And then I started to, we live now in the place that most of the book of Psalms was written. And so I've taken a lot of comfort in just reading a lot of Tehillim while I'm here, because most of those Tehillim, they were written in this place. And you can see that Emunah is a very dynamic reality. Like sometimes you're thirsty, you're starving, you feel so distant from God, you're just terrified in a narrow place, and all you want is to feel close to God again. And you see these Tehillim that are written where it's like, Tzam'alecha nafshi, like, I'm so thirsty for you, Hashem. And then sometimes you feel so full that you just overflow with gratitude. And, that you just have to like, get out your guitar
and
sing.
Here at this place, as I'm hearing you describe these feelings, I have had the emotions further on the spectrum, on both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah, there's something about...
Because it is when that overwhelming feeling of what more could I ever ask for? Katonti, I've become small. I have more than I could ever deserve, I'm living the culmination of the merits of generations, and it's exactly that fullness that when that's gone, and the vision is gone, and the eyes are gone, and you don't have the eyes to see it, it creates that void that is more pronounced and makes you more thirsty. So it's that spectrum that you pay the price for it.
Well, so then think about this. We have this story of Yaakov where at one time, man, the guy had a pretty hard life. I mean, Yaakov was abandoned twice. People know the story when the famous question is like, why didn't Yaakov go find Yosef? I mean, was he really convinced by the blood? Was he not convinced by the blood? Did he know that Yosef was gone? Because it says like, Vayima'en le'itnachem, he didn't really agree to be consoled because on some level, he just didn't really believe it. So why didn't he go out looking for him? Or why didn't Yosef go looking for him? And that's not the only time that Yaakov was abandoned. He was also abandoned when he left his home to begin with. He left Isaac and Rivka, and then they went off to work for Lavan, and no one really went after him. He never hears from Isaac or Rivka saying like, all right, time to come home now. We miss you, boy. He's just like left, like run away, bye. 22 years later, like Yaakov had a really, really hard life, and so hard that in fact he's like named Mr. Struggle. He is the man of struggle. He struggles with man, he struggles with God, and he prevails. That's actually the ultimate, meaning his life is a struggle, but somehow the struggle of Israel is one in which he ultimately prevails.
He struggles so much because when you think about it, Avraham he was born the name Avram, and then he became Avraham, right? And from then on, he's Avraham. You're not allowed to call him Avraham. He is Avraham. Same thing with, who else am I thinking about that got the name upgrade?
Sarah, Yehoshua.
Sarai became Sarah. Hoshea became Yehoshua. That's it. But once Yaakov becomes Yisrael, he then is called Yaakov again. He's called Yisrael and Yaakov sometimes within the same pasuk. He is called the pasuk in which he dies and his sons bury him. It says, and Yisrael died and they buried Jacob. And he's like, well, he's called Yisrael, he's called Yaakov, because this struggle is such an intrinsic part of his essence that there are times that he's Yaakov, which is the personal element of himself. And there's times he's Yisrael, which is the national identity, where he's the father of all the tribes, and then he has this national identity and the personal identity. He's like carrying around these multiple dimensions of consciousness and of roles in Jewish history. I mean, he was really like that bridge.
But ultimately, we're called the children of Israel, B'nai Israel, and so we take the name Israel with us, and it means that we struggle with man, we struggle with God, and ultimately we prevail. And I just thought about, these two sentences that I kind of live with in Yaakov's life, where on one hand, man, he had a hard life. But then on his way back to Israel, like what you said, he's like, Katonti mikol hachasadim mikol ha'emet. He's like, I am just overwhelmed. I'm so small compared to all of the amazing goodness that I've been bestowed. Like, wow, I don't even know what to do with myself. I just feel so small. I'm so grateful. And on the other end, at the very end of his life, Yaakov says, listen, Pharaoh, I want you to know my life has been long, hard, bitter, and miserable. Like, he just ends his life with his story saying, like, man,
That always rubbed me in a weird way.
Well, the Chazal say that he was punished for every single one of those words, that he lost years of his life for saying that this is what your life was. But clearly, the man lived in a struggle. And I'm thinking, man, I've never in my life lived through such a struggle as when I first became entangled with the destiny of this place. It has been a struggle from the first tree that we planted, because the mission is so much larger than us, and there's so many forces against us. And what are we? 4 families against the European Union and the United Nations? Do we even stand a chance?
And arguably sometimes the Israeli Supreme Court and Haaretz newspaper and Peace Now and the Israeli left and international pressure. Yeah, it's a lot. It's really a lot.
And so I've been thinking a lot about what that means for me, that life is a struggle, and what that means for the world, because, the more opportunities I have to really spend time with friends. And it's pretty interesting. I feel like I've been blessed with the opportunity of sometimes I'm able to meet people and pretty quickly become deep friends with them, because I'm not very good at the chit chat. I'm not very good at talking about movies and talking about just this and that.
What's the last movie you saw?
I literally don't even know. Star Wars. The last Star Wars with my kids. That's a movie that I like. I like Star Wars. I like the concept of the Force. I like that whole I love the fact that, like, I grew up with that, and now my kids are there, and it's the same actors. There's something about, but that's about more than a year
And let me
ago.
just warn you against seeing movies in the theater. When you haven't seen a movie for 6 months to a year, when you go see a movie in the theater, you open yourself up for the influence of that movie. I recently went to a movie with my wife and her parents. It was like a birthday thing. It was a thing. We went to a movie. It was what's it going to do? I had to go to the mikveh afterwards.
Oh God.
It was very influential. Yeah.
Well, so I don't go to movies much, thank God. But I have been listening to a man named Jordan Peterson. Tehillah got her hands on his book. And ironically, or interestingly, or serendipitously, he talks a lot about just the struggles of life. And I'm like, man, that's exactly what the Torah portions are talking about right now, at least through the lens in which I'm living them. And I think that it's given me a little bit of strength, that if the world is, because I grew up in America as a little boy, and Hollywood paints the picture of, like, the ideal life is, sitting in Hawaii, smoking the cigar with the coconut with the little umbrella thing. You're almost falling asleep because you're so relaxed, but you're not asleep yet. Like, that is the good life. But the Torah doesn't really present it that way. And I feel like that's skewing us from really the way we're meant to live. So if we look at all of the biblical characters, they all had really hard lives. David, hard life. Moses, rough life. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they all had real hard lives. And somehow through that struggle, their greatness emerged. The nobility of who they were kind of shined through. And so I feel like that really is the essence of what the Torah is teaching us. It doesn't say, by the way, if you live by the Torah, I'm going to give you $1 million and you're going to be sitting by the pool with a martini. No, none of the tzaddikim in the Torah sat by the pool with a martini. All of the tzaddikim of the Torah lived through struggles, but they lived through struggles like giants, and they became stronger and better people. And they're, for us, examples of how we're meant to live through the struggles of life, because this world, at least now that we're out of the garden, man, it's a struggle. Bezeat apecha tochal lechem. We are going to sweat to eat our bread, and we're going to fight to reclaim our homeland, and it's going to be a struggle. So here's the question. What do I do with that now? Meaning, once I shatter the illusion that no one is going to have the life of the martini and the pool, it's never, ever, ever going to happen. It's not even what we should be striving for. If our essence is to struggle with man and to struggle with God and prevail, then all right, let's take it on. A life of devotion makes the suffering of the world bearable. It empowers, I think, the person to persevere. And if we just take it on, meaning like this is a struggle that I've chosen. It's a struggle that I've said, you know what? I don't want to just struggle to make my ends meet. I'm going to try to take on the struggle of the Jewish people. because I believe that there is a light that needs to be brought into the world. And I'm really striving for the highest possible good.
Right, and that's why when I look around at this place, it really is like a transcendent experience, this place. Like when Yaakov goes to the Temple Mount and he says, Ma Norah HaMakom Hazeh, right? This place, he doesn't even have a name for it because it's more than just a place. It was like an experience of seeing angels go up and down. Then Abraham and Yitzhak, they both called the Temple Mount this place. God himself is called the place. Right, when we comfort a mourner, we say, "May the place Hamakom be with you." So this place, I try to look at it, and I start slowly at moments piercing through the veneer of duality of this world, and recognizing that what appears to be our job here isn't really our job here. What appears to be our job here is that we need to raise funds for this place because we dove in, and now it's not something that we can jump out of this pool. And it seems on some level we need to be working the land. That's true. We need to be raising funds. But then I realized, no, that's not really what this is about. What you said are the struggles with faith. The struggles with, are we going to be able to take the next step forward with an internal serenity, knowing that while it seems insurmountable, the challenges ahead of us, that God is really in charge and we're working. That's the game. Well, the game to play is the internal serenity game. When all four partners are meeting, me and you and Yossi and Roni, and we all have tremendous weight on us, on our shoulders of responsibility and challenges. Are we going to be generous with each other and judge each other by the benefit of the doubt? Because any partnership, there's strain on that. You're interdependent on each other in a way that no human being is super comfortable being. Are we going to go out of our way to love each other more than ourselves and to give each other the benefit? I can't say that I'm necessarily always successful at this, but I do believe that's the struggle.
Well, I think that there's another part to the puzzle. I mean, everything you said I agree with. But what is the fundamental basis on which the Torah stands? I mean, what is like the basic message, to me at least? The basic message, at least of Sefer Bereshit and until Shmot, is that the creator of the universe communicates with man, that he guides man if man is listening. He can tell Avraham, Lech Lecha. He can direct Moshe to tell us what to do, that he is living in a dynamic relationship with us, and we can in some way tune in to that communication, that we can live a guided life if we just know how to. And I think that's really the biggest question. How do we, because the internet reception out here is not very good, so I had to bring out this expert who put a small antenna on the top of my roof that takes the klita from Pnei Kedem and then enhances it into my home. So it's a new technology. It doesn't cause any radiation, but now finally, Baruch Hashem, I have cell phone reception.
Do you really, though?
For the most part, it's a heck of a lot better than it was.
My experience is not that it's any better than it was.
It's a lot better than it used to be.
But part of me thinks you're screening me regularly.
Okay.
And you say, I don't have reception.
Well, let me just tell you what happened. There was a huge...
I see you, I'm serious, 10 times more when you lived in Neve Daniel than when you live on the other side of the mountain. But whatever, I'm not going to air my grievances to you on the show. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what happened? There was quite a big storm here, and the antenna got knocked over. And it got knocked over. I mean, it didn't move very far. It just got knocked over a little bit, and all of a sudden, the klita in my home went down dramatically just from a little wind that knocked it over, 1 foot, and it fell down. And then the guy had to come and he stood it back up again and he drilled it into the roof, and then the klita came back. I'm like, man, that's pretty remarkable that just a few degrees to the left and a few degrees to the right, the reception just stops. And I feel like, man, that's probably exactly the way it is in spirituality, that if our antenna is not focused and aimed in the right direction, and we don't kind of prepare the vessel to receive the light, then if even we're just a few feet off, we really may not receive the reception, and we may either get the wrong guidance or may not get any guidance at all. And so I feel like what is the mechanism in which we can constantly make sure that our antennas are pointed in the right direction? And 2 answers came to me. Answer number 1 is, what is the calling of this generation? The Jewish people have a mission in the world. It's to be a light to the world. It's to fix this broken world, to stop the struggle and ultimately usher in a new way of living, a new way of being, a return to paradise. Fixing the world so that like the evil ceases to exist. That's really our ultimate purpose. And I know that probably in like the Christian world, so they put a lot of like the focus on the individual, and really Am Israel puts the focus on the nation. We are a chosen nation with a chosen purpose. And I feel like, one individual that is living a godly life, okay, so, he can help a certain amount of people, and one good person can maybe save a whale or two, but it's going to take a nation to change the world. And really, that's what the Bible is based on. It's the fact that there's going to be one nation situated in the darkest region in the world that's going to bring the light of freedom and democracy and the concept of man being created in the image of God into this world. And so the nation it's the ultimate purpose. And so the question is, am I aligned with the mission of this generation within the context of the Jewish people? And that's true for a Jew and for a non-Jew. How am I aligned with Israel's mission? Because Israel's mission ultimately is God's mission. So that's question number one. And then question number two, in my own personal life, am I striving to live the highest possible good? When I think about in my mind, what is the highest possible good that I could possibly achieve, that I could possibly live? My highest priorities and my highest ideals. Am I striving towards that? I mean, I may not always be able to live that, but at least am I in that direction? Is that the roadmap that I'm on? Or am I just like lost in frivolity? Am I getting lost on Facebook? Am I getting lost on just the nonsense of this world? Am I getting lost in my own personal finances and my own personal nonsense? Or am I like every once in a while thinking about what is my purpose here? What is my mission here? And I feel like the one blessing that has come out of this place, because almost all of my expectations about moving here have not been met. I mean, everything that I thought would be here is not here, except for two things, and those were the two most important things. I said I want to move out here first because I really believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me here. I believe God wants me here. That was my initial purpose. I felt a calling to come here, and I wanted to be true to that calling. And at least until now, I'm true to that calling. But just because I'm true to that calling doesn't mean I'm going to have an easy life now. Abraham didn't have an easy life. He heard the calling, made it to Israel, and he had to run away from Israel because there was a famine.
That was one condition in your mind that I think the opposite has happened. I remember you saying that you thought the coming out here would simplify your life.
I'm coming out to live the simple life. I'm coming out to live in nature. Things are going to be so much slower now and more simple now. That's for sure not true. Everything has become far more complicated, at least in this adjustment period. Maybe at one point I'll somehow make it a little bit more simple. But right now, man, life is a heck of a lot more complicated. I have absolutely no free time. And, all of the illusions that I sort of created, they've all
Even though there's one that ironically did come true. You said, when I move out there, I'm never going to leave. I'm never going to want to leave. Now, I don't know whether it's that you never want to leave, but you never do leave because you can't.
Yeah.
You can't leave. My own sister got married, and you couldn't go to her wedding because you couldn't find a babysitter with an M16.
Literally. Yeah. So, it's there are definitely sacrifices that have been made and that need to be made.
Wait, that was the first question. What's the second question?
So the second thing was I moved out here for my family. The lifestyle that I was living was a very modern lifestyle. And if I made it back for dinner, I felt pretty heroic. I'm like, yep, I made it back for family dinner. I'm a good dad. I made it back for family dinner, meaning that sometimes I didn't even make it back for dinner. And now I knew that living on this farm and where I am, I would have to be with my family because there is no other way. So I knew that that's the right thing for me and my family. And so by choosing that, I put myself in a situation where I have to be with my children. I have to be with my family. At 3 o'clock when they come home from school, I have to pick them up because the bus drops them 3 mountaintops away from me. I have to go and pick them up to bring them back here. And the impact that it's already had on my children has been so tangible, profound, amazing. Like I want to just like expand all of these days into infinity because I will never regret having them. I mean, just 2 days ago, Noam, he's my 3-year-old, and 3-year-olds are always my favorite. Although his older sister Emunah, she's 5.
She's holding on tight.
She's holding on tight. So, but Noam almost
by holding on tight, it means that she's just grabbing the cuteness.
Yeah, she's just so cute. My kids, they're just like so delicious. And so Noam almost always wakes up first And 2 days ago, half of my family was sick, and he wasn't sick, thank God. And he comes running into bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and he jumps into our bed in between me and Tehila. And then both Tehila and I like roll over, and we're both hugging him, and we're just like so happy to see him. And then he's like, "Oh, I just love you so much." And then Tila's like, "Oh, Noam, we love you so much." And then Noam's like, "I'm so happy." Like, oh my God. It was just like such a special moment of like, just like the, how happy the child could be, because he's like being loved and loving at the same time. And it was just like such a wholesome moment. And that moment could happen. It didn't have to happen on the farm here. But I just feel like because my family is now alone on this mountaintop, we've just grown closer together.
Just for our listeners out there, you should know Jeremy's tearing up, crying, thinking about this. Just wanted to let our listeners, because it's not video, they can't see.
They can't see it. Anyway, so there's just, the world outside is toxic in so many ways. And coming out here, I've done my best in some ways to shelter them from that toxicity, where instead of just sending them off into the streets to go play with kids, they're now at home with me, and they're playing with me, and they're working on our farm with me, and they're learning Torah with me. And I just know that I want my children to be around me, and I want to be around them as much as possible. And probably that's the best parenting advice that I could give any parent, that just spend as much time as you possibly can with your children, because they learn from you. They learn from your example. They want to be with you. They love you, and you should love them. And the more time, our time with them is so limited. Man, my oldest is 14. He's already out of the house. That's it. He's gone. I got only 5 left that are in my house. I want to spend the next 10 years dedicated to them, and on the farm, it's forcing me to be dedicated to them, whether I want to or not. So I know that that's been really good. But let me tell you, I played a game just this last Shabbat with all my family were around, at least the older ones that can read English.
Was it the game we gave you?
The game that you gave us. And the game is that there's cards, and if the cards have the same symbol on the card, then you have to name something that card has. Meaning, if let's say Ari has a fruit and I have a vegetable, and we have the same symbol, then I have to quickly say a name of a fruit like apple, banana, or Ari has to say the name of a vegetable. So we're passing the cards around.
Anomia?
Anomia is the name of the game. It's really quite a fun game. And Lavi, my oldest son, and Akiva, my second oldest, both have the same symbol, and they read each other's cards, and one card has actor, and the other card has fashion designer. And it's a very like high stress game, because you want to like say the thing quickly, because you get to take all the cards, and the point is to have as many cards as you can. And then Akiva's like, actor, and he's like, actor Superman, and he's like, no, that's not an actor. You need to say the name of the person that's the actor in Superman.
Doesn't he play himself?
Superman play himself? And so like my kid, fashion designer, actor, and it was a stalemate. No one could think of a name of an actor, and no one could think of a name of a fashion designer. Levy gets up, runs to his room, and starts going through his clothing, trying to see the tags on this clothing to see if there's a name of a fashion designer. And it was like such a moment for Tehila and I that like, wow, our 14-year-old and our 11-year-old don't know the name of a single actor on television or in the movies. And they don't know the name of Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein and all of the stupid, nonsensical stuff that I like grew up with. I've somehow been able to like shelter them in a way that they're not, I mean, eventually they're going to encounter that stuff whether I like it or not. But listen, I've kept them in a really good greenhouse as much as I possibly...
I think you mean biosphere.
No, a greenhouse, meaning when a little plant grows, you want to keep it in a greenhouse and then let its roots grow strong, and then you take it out of the ground, then you can plant it out into nature. But you keep it in like a very,
yeah. Okay. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I corrected you to something that is no more correct. No, it's not a greenhouse. It's a biosphere, which is just like a really big greenhouse. No, but the idea is it's isolation.
Isolation, and shelter them as much as you can.
From destructive things.
Yeah,
it really is destructive.
Yeah, the littler they are, then the more destructive whatever they're encountering becomes. Meaning, once they encounter the toxicity of this world at 16, 17, 18, okay, that's going to happen. You encounter it at 9, 10, it's far more damaging.
But I think that part of the beauty, we were talking about it early in the show, and I just want to revisit it because the struggle, I get sometimes there's this one spot in the house that I live in on this mountaintop that often has internet. And there's times where my brain just veges and I'm able to, at those times, watch YouTube. And I get into these weird things of what I'm going to watch on YouTube. So for some reason, I've been watching these little 5-minute mini documentaries of stories of families that have lost children to the opiate crisis in America. That's an epidemic, and it's heartbreaking, and I don't know what is drawing me to watch these, because it's not like fun and entertaining. It's heartbreaking, but there's something about it that is really capturing my mind. Like, what is it about these opiates that are addicting people to the degree that they're dying? Numerous siblings and families are dying. What is it? What is it about this opiate crisis? And then I look at here, what we have going on here. And while it is a struggle, the struggle, at least for me, has become beautiful because so much of it is internal, meaning the success of the struggle itself is not dependent on the outcome. Whether it is a perceived victory in the eyes of others, only I can know in my own heart whether this struggle that I faced internally, I overcame it and I was victorious or not. And it's not an external thing. And when I look at the West, I think they're missing, or they're lacking, this understanding that the true deepest struggles are in our character refinement, in our service of God, in our being true to our own principles, which gives life a vitality and a meaning that transcends circumstance or where you find yourself in the world. And so for me, I can say, coming out and living here on this mountain, you were talking about your children. 3 months ago, I get married. I don't even know if I went into that on the show and what the whole, I think it was such an overwhelming experience for me that it would take at least a year for the dust to settle enough for me to reflect on it and share it with everyone. But I can say that a mountaintop is a fantastic place to start a marriage, because it's me and her in this cabin on this mountaintop. So first of all, which is a great experience if you marry the right person. It could absolutely be a nightmare if not, and thank God I married the right person. It doesn't get old with her. It's constantly a pleasant, sweet, wonderful experience. Even I can say for me, I don't know about for her, but for me, I can say that is the case. But the growth that we're having in this little incubator, maybe that's the word you were looking for, incubator?
That's a good one.
Has been tremendous. So I think newly married couples should try to do something like this, assuming that you really got it right and you're with the right person. But on the other hand, I just got to share, Jeremy, can I share part 2 of the story that we started during our last show? I told the story about when I was a kid and I stole the money from my mother's wallet and the $5 or whatever it was, and they bought a book for the school about the 2 friends. One had 6 children and one had didn't have children yet. And they, the one with the 6 children said, I'm going to sneak over the wheat to my friend because he doesn't have any children to work his farm. And the other friend said, he has all those children to feed. So they're sneaking each other wheat. And every morning they woke up and what is going on? Why do we have the same amount of wheat? They ran into each other on the top of the mountain and they embraced, and that's where they built the temple. So it just happened to be that since then we got back the wheat that we grew for the very first time here on our farm. And so we each have this huge bag of wheat that we grew here on our farm. And I couldn't help it. I mean, the story I shared, why it was such a meaningful story, that it goes back to my childhood. And now it's hard to miss that I'm on one side of the mountain, you're on the other side of the mountain, and on the top of the mountain is our house of prayer. For me, there's just dimensions of meanings there. So I said, okay, I have this bag of wheat. So late at night, I take the bag of wheat and I have a pinched nerve in my neck so it hurts, but I'm going to do this thing. And I take it over the mountain to your house to give you the wheat because, you got 6 children. You need food for your children. And so as I'm approaching your house with this massive bag of wheat on my shoulders, your dogs start to bark, which I didn't think about. And that woke you up. And you come running out and with your hand on your gun, and you see me with the wheat on my shoulder. And you're like, what are you doing? I'm like, Jeremy, you have all these children. You need food for your children. And you're like, you're just looking for a place to put your wheat. Get that the heck out of here. Get out of here. So it didn't exactly end with like an embrace on the mountaintop. But that was a worthwhile story to share.
That's a great story to share. The struggle makes it all makes it worthwhile. There are things here that make the struggle worthwhile. And it seems every time, and I don't say that, I know that like Ari and I are known a little bit for exaggerating. You know, we have a little bit like a flair to our tone, a little bit of like just a little bit more pizzazz. This is just like the truth. Every time groups come out here, people cry, people have transcendental moments, people don't know what to do with themselves. They're so moved and touched. It's like the highlight of their trip.
I was actually thinking about reaching out to people that have come out here so they can send us and just say, share with us your experience of this place. But then I was like, what are we going to do with that? Just have
look,
like
a group from the 5 towns came out here on a
Oh,
bar
let's
mitzvah
play
trip.
that. Let's put in Yossi's.
And then, right. And so like the tour guide, a good friend of ours named Yossi.
You've heard his messages before. I love listening to his messages.
He sent us a message of the response of these, modern religious Jews from the 5 towns in New York that came out here.
Here it is. Listen to this.
Hey guys, thanks so much for a great day. The group absolutely loved it. You opened up eyes, and the reason why I'm calling now is because there's one guy from the group is like, listen, he came over to me, he's like, I'm sorry, I still can't calm down. I'm still emotional from that place. I've been to Israel 25 years in the Kotel and Tzfat and Kiva Rachel and everywhere, and I'm not a crier. And his wife and kids are there like, yeah, he never cries. And he's like, there was something about this. Like, I still can't bring. He's still. I'm telling you now. This is now 4:30. Has tears in his eye. It was great. Just a great day. Like I know I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. It was great. Thank you. I can't believe I get paid to do this. Thanks, guys. That's lacha.
And that's not like an exception. That is, think about what it's like, listeners around the world, to be on the receiving end of that. If everybody that came out to visit you at your house had a life-changing, profoundly paradigm-shifting experience, it's a little much. It really is. It's a little much. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift.
Well, it just means,
but
like,
it's logical and intuitive that there would be some price for that.
It's like there's like those. Every time that happens, it's a spice card. Every time that happens, it's like Hashem is saying, "Listen, this is why you're here. This is why it's hard. This is why you have a mission. This is why you have to accomplish it. You're lighting a spark in people's souls that needs to be lit. It's the purpose of this place. It's the purpose that you're here on this world for. And it's not just Jews. It's non-Jews. Just the other day, we had a group from Texas that came here. I'm telling you, people were in tears. 2 of them said, this has been the highlight of our trip in Israel. Something their first time in Israel. They'd never seen the Kotel before. They had seen all the Christian sites. They had seen like biblical Israel, old Israel, new Israel. They come out here. This was the highlight. I don't know. It's like overwhelming. And just the other week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was invited, Ari and I were both invited to speak at this conference in Jerusalem. I think there were about 300, 400 people from 35 different countries. And they actually asked me to sing a song. And, I'm putting out a music album soon, and I do have songs. And very often when the spirit hits me, I'll break out a guitar here for the groups, and we'll teach them a little bit of Tehillim. We'll teach them the Psalms in Hebrew, and we'll sing together in the place that the Psalms came down into the world. And it's just like really meaningful. And here I was singing the Psalms of David, in this music that came to me in this place. And now 35 countries were singing it in Hebrew. And all of it is happening, for me at least, because of this place. There is some sort of destiny in this place that's so mysterious and so overwhelming that, yeah, of course it's going to be a struggle. But Hashem says you're going to struggle with man, you're going to struggle with God, and Israel is ultimately going to prevail. And I just feel like as long as we're in line with the mission of the Jewish people, and as long as we're striving for the highest possible good, that we take our priorities and we say, are we living our priorities? And I think that family, that's just got to be in the top 3. Are we spending enough time with our family? Are we investing enough mental capacity for our family? When we come back home, are we thinking of conversations we want to have with our kids, things that we want to talk about with our wives, not just being reactive and just kind of but proactively shaping our lives in the direction that we want to go? And that if we're able to do that, I think we'll start to see that like things will like align and that Hashem will guide us.
Yeah, so let me just say, you're talking about the importance of family and investing in family, and that's true. But if there's one shift that I think has happened since coming out here to this place and having Jews and non-Jews from around the world, but right now I want to talk about Jews from throughout Israel, Jews from around the world. And this is a shift that's been happening over the years. It's away from Judaism being a religion and seeing our fellow Jews as co-religionists to Judaism, Jews being a family. We're a family. That's why Jacob's name was changed to Israel, because this individual man became the conduit, the bridge between individual succession to a nation. A nation meaning there were 12 tribes. We're all descended from these 12 brothers, meaning that we're all cousins. We're all family. We are all family. And so when you see what's going on around the world, I can't help but to feel like there's some sort of a cosmic spiritual balance going on, because the spiritual world is balanced. When certain amount of light is entering the world, darkness is entering the world also. And so I look over at America, at our family members in America, our cousins, our brothers in America, and I can't help, I don't like to be the guy when I see this anti-Semitism flaring up. It makes me, I don't want to be the guy that's blowing the whistle and be aware, but you see it happening more and more. There's just in LA a couple days ago, these two Jews on the way to synagogue a man tried to run him down with his car as he's screaming dirty Jews, and then Pittsburgh, and it's happening all around America more and more. By far, Jew hatred and attacks on Jews is the number one for hate crimes in America. And it's coming from both the right and from the left. But then this Airbnb thing happens, and this has really been on my mind. I'm sure you're thinking about the Airbnb thing because, there's so many dimensions that we could talk about. The irony of Airbnb saying that Judea and Samaria, only the Jews in Judea and Samaria in the West Bank are going to be delisted. It is the definition of Jew hatred or anti-Semitism. The definition. To me, it was like a terrible business move for them to take this on. But to me, it's also another level that I feel like Jews of America need to keep their eyes open. When I go on a speaking tour, I'm not going to say a Holocaust. What do I know? I don't know what the future holds or how impending a downturn is for Jews. And I just simply don't know. But what I do think is important is for Jews if there's one thing we have to learn from history, it's that no exile we've ever been in has lasted too many generations. It's never lasted too long. And this anti-Semitism is now going from where you could write it off and saying, okay, so it was a crazy guy in LA, a crazy guy in Brooklyn, a crazy guy in Florida, a swastika on a synagogue here, a crazy guy in Pittsburgh, writing it off one after another as a various crazy guy, to a corporate level, to now it's an organizational level.
No, it's also just, it's the far right neo-Nazis. It's the far left Berkeley, left-wing progressive that usually masqueraded in an attack against Israel, but it really is an attack against Judaism and the Torah and God. And then you have the Muslims at the same time. The Jews are getting hit from every angle. And I just feel like, man, it's happened in every single country. And, the Bible is batting 100%. Just like every single promise that was made in the Tanakh has come to pass in our lifetime. How the Jews believed 200 years ago is beyond me. They were just giants in faith. But now we're living in a time where all of these promises, they're all happening. The Jews returning to the land blossoming, the Hebrew language being revived, Israel becoming a military superpower, an economic superpower, and then one by one, countries just like exoduses from countries, from Ethiopia, from Russia. There's no Jews left in Norway, all of Europe. It's just like happening everywhere. What, you think America is going to be different? Is there a plan that's going to unfold? Oh, I'm telling you, if it's in the Tanakh, it's going to unfold. You're betting against.
But that's why, this week's Torah portion speaks exactly to that, right? Jacob and Laban, Yaakov and Lavan. It's a blueprint for the Jewish journey through the exile. It happens again and again and again. What does the Ramban say? That all the events experienced by Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, our forefathers, are depicted depictions that hint and foretell everything that will occur to their children in the future. And so the conflict between Yaakov and Lavan is this exact prototype that I'm talking about that will happen to the Jews in the lands of their dispersion. Think about it. Yaakov, he's forced to flee his home because Esav wants to murder him. After fleeing, he's penniless, a long and dangerous journey. Just think about the Jews arriving in Ellis Island, leaving everything behind. He finds a place of residence, starts from the bottom and works his way up, works very hard. And despite attempts to keep him down, eventually he achieves great wealth. He achieves great wealth not only for him, but for everybody around him. He becomes wealthy. He becomes comfortable. And then he hears the sons of Lavan saying that Yaakov stole their wealth. And he stole the wealth of their father. Though it doesn't matter the fact that Lavan is wealthier than he ever was before Jacob got there because of Jacob. The fact that Jacob has wealth, that is stolen from him. And by the way, that's exactly what you hear in the left today in America. It doesn't matter that everybody that America is doing very well economically. Those that have wealth, it's coming at their expense. You know, when we hear you remember that chant that the far right was saying, Jews will not replace us. You remember that?
Sure.
So I was always hearing, I thought they were saying, Jews will not replace us, meaning like, how did you hear that?
That the Jews are going to become the leaders and that they're going to run the show.
So I heard that someone was saying, no, that their bosses are all Jewish, and they're afraid that, Pittsburgh, what happened there, the guy, he attacked a synagogue that was advocating immigration to America from all these various other countries, and that Jews are at the power helms and that they're going to replace these white Americans with foreigners. But the point is, whatever the facade, whatever the guise is, that the hatred and the fear comes, it comes. And the sons of Laban and Laban start looking at the Jewish people differently. And when it's already rising to an organizational level, an organizational level of such a massive global level, and it's about Jews, pointing out Jews, that's already a time where I think Jews need to open their eyes and be aware. Because people are getting all of these different lessons from this Airbnb thing. But I think that's a primary one. A lot of people are talking about the Airbnb thing right now. It's really, last night we went and we filmed the Judean Roundtable at a Tzimmer at like a vacation home that's on Airbnb in Tacoma, in Judea.
On Airbnb.
It's 200 properties in all of these countries around the world where there's disputed territories. They don't come down on one side or another ever, but this is the only one.
No, it's a disputed territory, fine, but they only delisted the Jews. I mean, there's a disputed territory, and they have decided to align themselves against the Jews. So it's disputed, and they've made the choice that they're going to boycott the Jews. All right, great.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not a popular message, but I can't help it. If we're saying that we have to think and worry about family, then if you're talking about family, you have to share what's on your heart. Otherwise, you're just more consumed with yourself and not alienating people or upsetting people or making waves.
Well, here's what
sharing.
Here's what I want to say. Just about my last message about the family is that the radical left, they want to deconstruct the family. They want to destroy the family. I mean, the whole Torah is told through the prism of a family, like you said. It's Abraham and Sarah and their children, and then there's Isaac and their children, and then there's Jacob and their children. It's like the whole thing is through the prism of family. And now the radical left want to, the patriarchal society and blah blah blah. They just want to deconstruct everything, and they like we just want to love humanity. Let's just love everyone. Why do we have to love only our family? It seems small-minded. It seems narrow. It seems small. I don't want to just love my family. It seems tribalistic to only love my family or even my own nation. And I would posit that it's the exact opposite, that a family that grows up loving each other, a family that grows up dedicated and loyal to each other, is a family that would learn how to love and be loyal to a larger sphere around them. A family that loves itself can then love its expanded family, that could love its country. And then a person that's able to love its country can ultimately learn to love the world. But a person that grows up not really ever knowing how to establish the initial fundamental ties within brotherhood, within mother, father, and family, they'll never be able to really have the capacity to love the world. They'll always be loving themselves. And then you can see that the left, I mean, they're not having children anymore. They're all dying on opiates and they're all on antidepressants because they're lacking just the basic relational love that exists. And the Torah is such wisdom. It's saying, build families. Pru urvu is the first commandment. Be fruitful and multiply. And then from that, you can change the whole world. And so from the mountains of Judea, that really is my message to all the families out there. Like, keep on keeping on. It's a struggle. And imagine all the stories of the Tanakh are the struggles of families just trying to keep it together. I mean, the biggest tzaddikim, their children had sibling rivalries. The children had problems. The children are fighting. And we are still living those epic battles through our own lives today. So know that even the Avot struggled in raising their families. Raising children is freaking hard. It's painful and it's difficult. But I think that if you really want to live with the concept of fixing the world in the kingdom of God, it's the best place to start.
So we're going to sign off now, but I'm going to insert at this point another Better Know a Jew segment. You know, we have so many people that come through, and every once in a while I have an acute awareness, oh, this is the time. Let me put in, let me interview this holy Jew. And so I invited someone out who has had a profound effect on my life. And I think that of the Jewish people in Israel today. He wrote Eretz Yisrael in the Parsha. So often the Torah ideas that I get about the week are from that book, where he sort of teases out the Israel theme from the book. It's Rav Moshe Lichtman. I want you to hear this holy Jew and what he has to say. Shalom from Judea.
If you want to improve relations between Israel and American Jews, one of the things that you should do is encourage people to listen to the Land of Israel Network. Listen to Eve Harrow, and listen to Yishai Fleischer, and listen to Ari and Jeremy, and Shlomo Katz, and listen to Mike Foyer, and listen to Josh Haston, because the Land of Israel Network has a mission, and that's to spread love between Israel and American Jews. There's so much to love about Israel. There's so much to love about Israelis. And I think the Land of Israel Network is part of the solution. You are all part of the solution.
You're listening to the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, broadcasting the truth and beauty of Israel to the world.
Shalom Aleichem. Ari Abramowitz here. This is a very, very big deal, a very big moment for me in my life. We are sitting here in the cave, one of the most beautiful caves in the world, the cave at Arugot Farms, as you know we're calling it right now at the moment, out here at the Land of Israel Network headquarters. And this past week, I won't get into the whole story, but I've been trying to have a lev shomea, a listening heart. And I was very overwhelmingly compelled to invite out someone who I consider one of the great legends in Israel, someone who is a great leader of our generation, someone who has been a tremendous influence on me in my life, in my love for Israel, in my mission in the world. So much of the Torahs that I've shared with all of you over the years have been directly inspired and plagiarized from this great leader in Israel. And I called him up and I said, Rav Lichtman, you don't know who I am, but please consider coming out here to my place. And he said, okay, I'm going to come. And now my dog Scoop is here with us, and he's running around and making a big dirt issue. A lot of dust is flying up. But Rav Lichtman, thank you so much for coming out here, for saying yes.
My absolute pleasure. I wouldn't miss it for the world. To see another place in Eretz Yisrael, to get another portion in Olam Haba, to walk 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael that I've never been in before, is a tremendous zechus, and I appreciate it, and I thank you for inviting me.
Well, on behalf of Scoop, I thank you for coming. He is making quite an issue right now, so I'm going to just keep him here. And but okay, so let me just tell our listeners a little bit about you. So you wrote Eretz Yisrael in the Parsha.
Correct.
You translated Eim Habanim Smicha.
Correct.
You've written a number of other books. I mean, these 2 books are like foundational books in Torah religious Zionism, and you've made them accessible to Am Yisrael today, the English-speaking world,
yeah.
The English-speaking world today. What is your personal story?
My personal story. Okay, I was born and raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Went to the JEC. Like any typical American kid, And then I went for my year in Israel, and that's when everything changed. My whole life changed because I fell in love with Eretz Yisrael almost from the very beginning. And I realized that this is where I have to be. And the rest of my life was geared towards getting back here. I went to Yeshiva University after my year in Israel. But right after I finished college, I came right back to Israel and studied a few more years here in Yeshiva. And had a little hiatus back in America to find my wife. Baruch Hashem, that's a whole story in and of itself. If you want, I can tell you a little bit about that. And then came back on Aliyah around 28 years ago, something like that.
So, yeah, I would love to hear the backstory of the legend. Yes, okay. Tell us.
No, so the interesting thing about my wife and I is, so I had been in Israel for 4 years. I was already an older guy. I was 25 years old, very much looking to get married, and I was not being successful here in Israel. So I went back to America. I went to Camp Hask for the summer. And, you know, as some people know, Hask is a good place to find very special girls. So I found my wife there. So we started dating. And at some point, I said, you know, it's clear that, you know, both of our families lived in America. So it was clear that when we get married, it's going to be in America. But I said, I can't see such an important milestone in my life, marriage, having nothing to do with Eretz Yisrael. So I said, how about we fly to Israel for 3.5 days to get engaged? At least our engagement will be in Israel. So that's exactly what we did. It's actually around this time of year, without telling anybody except for one person, just in case. We flew to Israel, went straight to the Kotel, and that's where we got engaged. And then again, a short year and a half, 2 years later, we had made Aliyah, and we've lived there ever since.
Well, there's just a lot of personal overlap here. You asked me where I went to yeshiva here in Israel. I said BMT, and you said you also you went to BMT?
I went to BMT for several years, and I was a Madri, and I was in the Kollel, in the Grus Kollel.
Wow, so I wasn't there when you were there. I missed you, having you as a Rav. That would have been a great merit. But my wife, she spent many years at Hask, and maybe that's why it took so long, because I never went to find her there. So she was in Hask, and we actually got engaged very close to the Kotel. We got engaged in a helicopter over Har HaBayit. That was a crazy story.
You beat me. Yeah, the only problem is you didn't fly from America to get there. You were here already.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. So okay. So you met your wife, and you you went straight to living here. You started your life here in Israel.
No, we were there for 1 year, so my wife could finish up a degree in nursing. And right away after that, But
that was an early discussion with her during the,
there was no question. I wasn't going to go out with anybody who didn't want to live in Israel. That was not even an issue. Yes, she very much wanted to. She is a big Zionist herself. She's a very special woman, but the show is not about her.
And how did you come to decide that these are the books you wanted to write?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So I had just a natural love of Eretz Yisrael that I got, as I said, in my year in Israel. But, it wasn't really based so much on sources. Okay, there were a few books that I had read, but, it was just this feeling. I belong. I belong in Israel. The Shavuot before we made Aliyah. So it was clear I was going to make Aliyah anyway. It's not like this book made up my mind. But the Shavuot before we made Aliyah, it was only a few months before. On Shavuot night, you learn all night, and, you're always looking for something exciting to learn so that you won't fall asleep. So I decided to take out of my my shelf Eim Habanim Smecha, a book that I had bought when I was here in Israel, because I had heard that it's a really great book, an important book about Israel. But I had tried to learn it before and was unsuccessful. And now I said, I'm going to try it again. And this time I'm going to skip the introductions that were written by the publishers, because that's where I really got stuck. I said,
it's so crazy you say that. I've gotten stuck in the introductions for years.
Right, exactly.
Because they're very rich.
Yes. Now, I'm not talking about the instructions to the book. I'll get to that in a second. I'm saying not the ones that Rav Tachtal, wrote, but the introductions that the publishers wrote. So I decided to skip that, go right to the book. And wow, I just fell in love with the book. I started reading it, and I actually finished it after we made Aliyah. And then I noticed in the introduction to the book that it gives a thanks to a Rav Uri Cohen. And Rav Uri Cohen was the Rosh Kollel of the kollel that I went to in Mevaseret Zion. So I went over to him one day and I said, what's your connection to this book? And he said, oh, my son is the one who put it out. And that's Rav Dani Cohen, a very close friend of mine now, my publisher. So I went over to him and I said, this book has to be translated into English. Not that I was going to do it. I just said, you got to get somebody to translate this. This is the most unbelievable book. It has to be, made available, accessible to the English-speaking public. So he said to me, you know what? Actually, we did get somebody who translated it. And I have the translation. It just needs some editing, and and then we're going to put it out. So I said, look, I've never done this before, but I'm willing to look at it. Let me just look and see what it's like. So he gave me a copy of it, and I immediately saw that it was not done very well. It really needed a tremendous amount of work, and it would be worse to put it out like that than not to put it out at all. So I said, I'll try to edit it. Again, never having done this before. I did one chapter like that, and then I realized I'm spending more time trying to edit the book the way this other guy had translated it. I might as well just start from scratch. And then I worked for 3 years on the book, and I put it out through my publisher, Dani Cohen, Kol Mevasser Publishers. And, it was very successful, very well received by the
Can you give us a brief biological background of Rav Teichtal and how the book came into being on the original front?
Wow. Okay. So Rav Teichtal was a genius, a real, child prodigy, born in a very, very religious community in Hungary. He was born in 1885, if I'm not mistaken, 1885. And, from a very young age, he was already recognized as a future Gadol b'Yisrael. And he was also extremely anti-Zionistic when the whole Zionist movement started, because his Rebbeim, including the Munkacher. Now, Munkacher is like Satmar. I mean, that's how extremely against anti-Zionistic they are. And he just absorbed this from his Rebbeim. And that's the way he went through his life until he was around 60 years old, which is when the Holocaust began. And
just a brief question for a lot of our listeners out there, myself included. Could you is it a long answer, or is it a short, simple answer as to why the Munkacher and Satmar, why they were so anti-Zionist?
I'm not so sure it's such a short answer, but I'll try to say it very shortly. Mainly, they were against the secular nature of Zionism. They were afraid that it was going to affect religious Jews who would join. So they were very against any religious Jew joining with them. Especially, you have to remember, it was after the Enlightenment, and they didn't want Jews to be sucked in, so to say, to this anti-religious movement. And there's some truth to that. They also had specific ideological problems, because they believe that the final redemption has to come directly by God in a miraculous fashion, and without the help of men, without our help. And therefore, they felt that the whole Zionist movement was just, doomed from the beginning, anti-Torah, anti-halacha, and therefore they were vehemently against it.
Mm-hmm.
So Rav Teichtal agreed with this until the Holocaust happened. And then he describes how he's hiding out. He managed to escape, and how he sees through the cracks of the attic where he was hiding. He sees the people of his community. He was the Rosh Yeshiva. He was the Rosh Kollel. He was the Rav of the community, and how his flock were being taken away and beaten, and it really had an effect on him. And he said right there and then in that attic, he said, I have to find out why this is happening. I have to reinvestigate why this is happening to the Jewish people. And with almost no books, he went through everything that he knew already before, because he knew the entire Torah almost by heart. And he said he came to the conclusion that we were wrong, that the religious movement was, religious community was wrong for opposing Zionism, and that in reality, Zionism is God's will. Hashem wants the Jewish people to return to Eretz Yisrael, and however that's going to happen, whether it's going to be through religious Jews or secular Jews, it doesn't matter. The Jewish people have to come back to Eretz Yisrael, and he wrote this magnificent work. There's nothing that compares to it. I've written, as you mentioned, many books since then on Eretz Yisrael, translated many books. There is nothing that comes close to Rav Tachtal's work. It is unique. It's a life changer. I tell everybody when I try to convince them to buy the book, I said it'll change your life. It literally will change your life.
It changed my life. That's for sure. And just the intellectual honesty involved.
Yes, exactly.
And being able to reassess without any books.
Correct.
To take what he already knew and look at it through a foundationally new prism.
Right.
I mean, it's one of the great stories, in Jewish history.
Yes,
I think
the
story of Rav Tachtal, and so that was actually one of the initial reasons I wanted. I wanted to sell these books to the people that come up. We don't sell products; we're not like a commercial thing. But I said one thing I want to sell: the book Ein Habanim Smecha. And so you said that they're out of print right now.
Correct.
But they will be in print again.
Yes.
But you said that there's something new that you put together.
Right. There's an abridged version. A few years ago, one of the donors of the book approached me and said that the book is very heavy physically, and also, I don't know how you want to say it. It's difficult. It's a difficult read, even in English, for some people, especially in our generation. I find with internet and everything, maybe people today could read one line, one paragraph, but to read a 500-page book is a little bit difficult for them. So we decided to abridge it, to shorten it, and what I basically did was
I imagine it's hard to do, because when I read through that, there's not like
right
an extraneous word.
Exactly. So I really had deliberation whether I should do such a thing, and I really, ask forgiveness from Rav Tachtal, but I really believe that he is smiling down from the heavens, because he realizes that this is the way his word is going to get disseminated in this world. You're right that there's not extra. I think everything is beautiful and everything should be read. However, you have to remember that he's writing this during the Holocaust. He didn't really edit it, although he didn't have to so much, because he just was so talented in writing and the drashot. Nonetheless, there are some times when there's 5 or 6 proofs for the same thing, and I think everyone is important. But I think the reader can get the point after 1 or 2 proofs. So I would take out the extra. I took out the extra proofs. Or sometimes there's a few sections that are really not directly on the topic of the book. It's sort of like a segue. So those I took out, and anybody who wants to can read them online. Also, by the way, I have everything I took out of the book I put online, and you could also buy the full version. It will be reprinted Be'ezrat Hashem very soon.
Okay, I'm hoping that the audio didn't just short out. But anyways, so okay, so you've come out here now. Tell me what did you think about this your time here so far?
Wow, this place is amazing. It really makes me think that I'm nobody. I'm a nobody living in Beit Shemesh, comfortable, old Beit Shemesh, when people are really being Moser Nefesh to build up Eretz Yisrael here out in the Judean hills.
For our listeners out there, Moser Nefesh means self-sacrificing.
Yes,
I told Rav Lichtman that I don't feel like I have any personal Mesirut Nefesh here, because this has been the greatest gift of my life. It's been such a privilege to be here. But
nonetheless, it is a tremendous
we actually
thing.
played a few weeks ago that there was a rabbi from Toronto, one of the big rabbis there, and there was a debate he had with his son-in-law, who was, when they left here, about whether this counts as Mesirut Nefesh. Because he said, well, there needs to be some sort of pain involved. So if there's no pain involved, is it really Mesirut Nefesh? That was the question.
Yeah. Okay. But as I told you, there's a risk involved, and that's the Mesirut Nefesh, the willingness to invest so much effort and money into such a thing when you don't know, unfortunately, what could be tomorrow, what could happen. And, we all, of course, pray that nothing will happen, and this place will become one day a Ir V'Eim B'Yisrael, a big city in amongst the Jewish people. but there definitely is Mesirut Nefesh. So yeah, I'm very
Also,
impressed.
for me, Jeremy was my commander in the army. We were in Lebanon, we were in Hebron, we were in Gaza. I was in New York for a year and a half. I got stabbed in the back walking down the street in New York
Wow.
City. So I feel like I'm not even supposed to be alive at this point. It's all gravy for me from this point on. But also, it's not only the government. It's also we're surrounded by these Arabs. There's no fences or security, and all it takes is one really evil one. But on the other hand, you could also cut your finger on a fence post and get a staph infection and die.
Correct.
It's like it's sort of a pot
Right.
shot
It's
that
all
way.
it's all up to God, exactly. And the how long you're going to live is up to God. What you do during the time between your birth and your death, that's up to you. Right?
Right.
Hakol b'yedei shamayim chutz miyirat shamayim. Everything is God's hands except for your fear of God, and that's what this is. This is part of fear of God. Doing the will of God, building up His land, and helping the Jewish people be redeemed. That's really what this is all about. This is the redemption of the land and of the people. This is something that everyone should be very thankful to you for, and also should be trying to do themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Well, thank you, Rav Lichtman. I'm humbled by you saying that. I want to ask you, you're teaching right now. You teach in Oraita. You teach in
Ashrenu.
Ashrenu.
I've taught in many different places, all the different yeshivot in this country. And plus I speak every year in almost every single yeshiva and seminary, talking about the importance of living in Israel, trying to sell my books to them at very, very, very discounted prices so that they can just have them and hopefully one day be inspired.
Influenced by them. I'm so happy
Yes.
to hear that. So going and reaching out and meeting all these American kids, what is a primary concern you have for today's generation, for the Jewish people in the world today? Answer that however you'd like.
Yeah. I'm certainly connection to Israel, to the state of Israel, the land of Israel, is a very big one. I am worried about that, but I have to tell you that I think I'm more worried about the connection to Torah. I just see that the internet and entertainment and the whole Western culture is really seeping in. Already has a long time, but it's really it's become, I think, more difficult to teach students who come for the year because they're not detached from their home base. When I came to Israel, and you probably also came to BMT way back.
You had to stand in line for an orange phone and stick a card in there.
Okay, that was you. I had to stand in line and put asimonim in the phone to call somebody in the country, and certainly call out of the country. I had to go to the post office and make a collect call. I mean, you just sat and learned because you had nothing else to do. It was so difficult to be in touch with everybody else. And nowadays, I mean, I have students who even have televisions in their rooms. Forget about their computers and their iPhones.
The iPhone is a television.
It is a television, but they have an actual television. There's no detachment from that culture and trying to experience the real culture of the Jewish people. That I think is the real problem. And then from that, of course, the connection to Israel will come if we can connect to our sources and to the Torah. We'll certainly connect to the land of Israel, which is throughout our Torah.
Yeah, I look at the assimilation in America, and what is it, 60-something% intermarriage, more than that even.
Right.
And it's so concerning. I think, what is the only thing that can really remedy that? And I think that the only thing is Israel. That's the only remedy, is to get as many
Correct.
Jews here as possible.
That is correct. Yes, we have to get the Jews here. And then once we get them here, we have to get them also to understand the importance of Torah Yisrael, right? There's the Rav Kook's famous three, Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Torah Al Pi Torah Yisrael. So yeah, we got to get Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, into Eretz Yisrael. That's very, very, very true. And then work on the Torah Yisrael, the connection to the Torah.
I think even learning Torah from, if it's not the Rav Kook Torah Yisrael, just learning Torah in Eretz Yisrael, it does something. There's something more holistic about its effect.
Yeah, no question about it. That's why so many students who do come for the year do get turned on to Judaism. I will say a little bit of a criticism. I think that the yeshivot are not doing enough to push and to make their students aware of the centrality of the land of Israel in our religion. I'm not telling them to say something that's not true. Just push or show them how clear it is in the Torah that this is where we belong. I think a lot of the yeshivot and seminaries are afraid of that because they might lose students. And from my experience,
Why would they lose students?
Because the parents won't want to
Because
send
the parents, so they lose parents.
won't want to send the students to a place that pushes Aliyah. It's a little bit of a problem. It's a lot of a problem. But
you can skip this question if you'd like, but I want to ask it. Do you feel like there is a danger for American Jewry, for exile Jewry in general, but
Right.
American Jewry in specific?
Right. So
other than assimilation.
Okay. So actually, it's interesting you say that because you started with, my history, how I got into this. So I didn't tell you the main thing, and it connects to this question. So I was here for my year in Israel. I told you 18 years. Israel was not on my map, my radar at all. I come here for the year and the first month or two also. So I was just having fun. We were enjoying ourselves. And a lot of the Rebbeim were talking about Israel, and it just didn't seep in. And a lot of my friends already were starting to get into this idea of Aliyah and Eretz Yisrael is where we belong, but I wasn't. And then the yeshiva PMT took us to a place called the Museum of the Potential Holocaust.
The Museum of the Potential Holocaust?
Yes.
I've never heard of that.
You never heard of that? Okay, so I think it was part of Diaspora Yeshiva, maybe. I don't remember where it is, and I don't think it exists anymore. But basically what they had was
But it was there in the old city.
It was somewhere in the old city, I think, yeah. And so they had all these different
displays.
Displays of anti-Semitism in America and like rural America, Ku Klux Klan and all these white supremacists, and they're chanting movies that clips, video clips of these crazies, calling for the death of Jews and things like that. And I, by the way, had experienced anti-Semitism when I was growing up. Kids around my area would push me down and call me a Jew and whatever, and I obviously didn't like that. So it must have been a combination of those two things. After the program, the woman who was leading it asks a question, throws out a question to the audience. She says, "So what's the answer to this?" So as if being guided by God, my hand raised to the sky, and I said, "We all have to move to Israel." That was it. From that moment on in my life, that this become my focus, all because of that. So I always tell people, I say, the scare tactic, so to say, there will be a Holocaust in America. Eventually, they're going to turn on us.
My experience is that has not been overwhelmingly effective.
Right. So what's that? I'm going to get to that. So, for some people, that's a wake up call, and for me, it was a wake up call. And from then on, I don't emphasize that because I don't think that it speaks to a lot of people. In reality, what do you think? I mean, I try to do it more through Torah sources. This is where we belong because this is where we belong. Not because you have to run away from America. It's because you should be running towards Israel because this is where the Jewish people belong. Having said that, I would still have to say that obviously I'm not a prophet and I don't know what's going to be, but we do know one thing, and that is that every other exile that the Jewish people were in ended in tragedy. So why should America be different? Why should it be different? How could possibly happen? I can't even imagine. I can't even fathom it.
That's one thing I'm confident in saying, that how it would happen is different. It's going to be, every time it's different. And the problem is people are always looking out for the last time and being like, America couldn't be Nazi Germany. Agreed.
Right. Of course.
Agreed. It can't be. It's just not made of that fabric.
Right. There's a spiritual Holocaust going on in America. That could be it.
But there's also a very alarming trend of the left in America becoming more and more virulently anti-Semitic, even on a corporate level, with Airbnb this past week.
Yeah.
Saying only Jews. You cannot rent from Jews in Judea.
Area, right? Not the.
That's a big corporate. That's a big hit.
For sure. So my main message is come to here because this is where we belong. But on the side, I would say, we don't belong anywhere else either. Not only we belong in Israel, we don't belong anywhere else. And Hashem has his way of making us realize that. And that's, by the way, a very big part of Ema Banim Smecha is saying that to the Jews who are going through the Holocaust. He said, well, look how much effort we put into building up Europe, and look at the thanks that we get. Look at this anti-Semitism. They want us out. They're killing us by the millions. And again, I don't think that's going to happen in America, but something will happen to wake us up that we don't belong there, because Hashem has a plan. He wants the Jewish people back in Israel. And, slowly but surely, however it has to happen, it will happen. Hashem will pull the strings and make sure that it happens. And if Jews are too entrenched in American society, Hashem will have to find some way to uproot them. Yeah, extricate them and uproot them from there. Yes.
Rav Moshe Lichtman, thank you so much. It's such an honor for me personally having you out here, for this place, and for having you on the Land of Israel Network. Thank you very much. How can people find out more about you? How can they reach out if they want to buy one of your books?
Okay, so I have a website called toratzion.com. That's TORATZION.com. And that's where my books are sold, actually, except for my most recent one. It's called A Drop in the Ocean, 365, a daily dose of Eretz Yisrael, 365 sources on the importance of living in Israel. Sources in Hebrew and in English translation with explanations. It's a beautiful read. So there, you probably should buy it through Shavei Israel, Michael Freund,
Sure.
Shavei Israel, his organization, a beautiful organization.
Or you could come out to our mountain.
Right.
On the tip of Judea.
They just bought a few
God,
copies
we'll
of it. Yes.
having some here.
Yes. Or you can contact me through my website and I can get you a book, but going very fast and I don't have that many left. Hopefully we'll reprint them soon. So thank you for listening, and thank you for having me here, Ari.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
During the darkest time of the year, we light the Hanukkah candles to remember that the truth and values we brought to the world at Mount Sinai will endure forever, and that every person who loves Israel and stands with Israel is a modern-day Maccabee. And just as God performed magnificent miracles before the eyes of the world through the Maccabees in those days, God is performing even greater miracles through the Maccabees at this time. Because here in the land of Israel, we never